Right, so great to be participating in the Virtual Exchange Summit, and that I love the theme of empowering future leaders in an interconnected world. I thought what would be useful from my perspective is to share with you the views from Europe, and I will explain how we collate those views through the course of this presentation. So, brief introduction about myself. I am the Vice President of the European Association for International Education, the EAIE, and also Managing Director of HSC Education. I'm a former Deputy Vice Chancellor for Global Partnerships at the University of Western Australia and a past Deputy Vice President for Global Business Development at King's College London. And I've worked in the sector for over 20 years. So the EAIE, the European Association for International Education, is an organization that was founded back in 1989, and we describe it as a supportive ecosystem for international higher education professionals. So that is to say, the practitioners in the international higher education field in Europe are brought together under this association, and we support them through our membership and various activities. We are a non-profit member organization. We're headquartered in Amsterdam in the Netherlands and have over 3,000 individual members and typically over 7,000 attendees at our annual conference. And alongside that, we offer a range of training, publications, mentorship, networking, research, etc., all to support the practitioners in international higher education. In terms of our strategy, it has three core components. One is to enable the sector. So that is to be the leading platform to empower the international education professionals to achieve successful results. The second is to influence and engage, and that is really to communicate the power and the potential of international education to serve society. And the third is to demonstrate impact, which is to drive responsible, impactful international education through data, insights, and research. We have, in terms of our structure, 9 core areas, and you'll see them there. This is our taxonomy. It is also the structure of our thematic committees. These are expert committees made up of practitioners and academics who address these 9 distinctive areas. And you will see under teaching, learning, and curriculum, there is a subheading and specialization in virtual exchange. In terms of our research agenda, the core 5 pillars are listed there. I will focus on the EAIE barometer, and we'll be sharing some of the results from this particular survey. But the other pillars are worth noting as well, that focus on areas such as climate action, policies around internationalization. We have a research fund that puts out a call for early career researchers who are operating in the field of internationalization research. We also highlight existing research through our research snapshots. So what is the EAIE barometer? This is the largest and most geographically representative survey in Europe. It is internationalization through the eyes of the professionals directly involved in carrying out international higher education work. We are now into our 3rd edition, which was published late last year. And it looks in the 3rd edition at 5 key areas. So the international higher education professionals that talk, being surveyed about their own roles, being surveyed about their institution or organizations in terms of the structure and the strategy for internationalization, the goals and stakeholder influences, looking at budgets for internationalization, the impact of internationalization, and lastly, how their institutions are performing in relation to specific topics of current interest. So you'll see that the typical number of respondents and the number of countries. So the latest edition, just under 3,000 respondents and 46 countries represented. And if we look at the profile of the respondees, they are from the European higher education area. The majority of them work in public institutions, mainly HEIs. They're focused in different areas, but mainly in student and staff mobility partnerships and European funded programs, including mobility programs in particular. They represent different roles, all the way from heads of international offices through to faculty members, varying periods of experience within their current roles. 17% of them identify as belonging to an underrepresented group. And you can see that there are all levels of experience that are covered within this survey group. So I'm going to share some findings, but I thought it'd be useful to just, before I present the findings from Europe, to get a sense from you, the audience, your views on the same questions that some of the questions that I'll be highlighting the answers to. So Ethan, if we may just launch the first poll, which is, how has your role changed over the past 3 years? Can you present the results of that poll, please?
Oh.
Are we able to see the results?
Are you able to see the results, or we need to share with you? Because on our screen we can clearly see the result, but there may have some technical problems. Okay, so
I see.
Yeah, even please.
Why don't you tell me the results then? I can't see any. I can just see the question.
No worries. Maybe I just interpret the result or right now with my information. So around 16% of them, 16% of the respondents claim that their role now requires more time. Okay, so none of us vote for the role requires new or different skills. But the majority goes to the third options, which draw the 50% of us claim that my role now requires both now or different skills and more time effort. And 5% of us claim that my role has not changed much. So I think the majority goes to the third option.
Great, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just seen a screenshot of that. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, let me try to get back to the screen. There we go. Right. So now if we compare the results with those in the barometer, so the European perspective, as it were, you'll see that you have about 37% there highlighting that they feel that their role now requires both new or different skills and more time effort. 30% have said that their role requires more time and effort, and only 19% say that their role has not changed much. If we look at what are those new or different skills that your role now requires, you can see that the vast majority is in digital and AI skills that respondents are highlighting. And the second largest, which is just over half of that, is in leadership skills. So if we then turn to poll number 2, which is what level of attention do virtual internationalization activities require for your institution to achieve its internationalization goals over the next 3 to 5 years? If you could please launch that poll. And Venus, if you could let me know when they've responded, and same again, if you just highlight the results for me.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
So now we are sharing the results.
Great, I can see those as well. Good. So here we can see roughly a similar number of respondents saying more attention is required to achieve its internationalization goals, and 42% saying continued level of attention required, and with a small number of respondents saying unsure, does not apply. Okay, so if we then look at the results from, oh, sorry, apologies, before we do that, there's a connected poll to that, which is what level of attention does digitization of administrative tasks require for your institution to achieve its internationalization goals over the next 3 to 5 years? And if you could put the results up on screen whenever they're ready.
Yeah, now we may
They're on.
share the results by sharing it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here we can see nearly 60% are saying more attention is required for the digitization of administrative tasks to achieve its internationalization goals, and roughly a quarter saying continued levels of attention as now. So if we then contrast that with the results from the barometer, what we can see there is, if we look at virtual internationalization activities, you can see that the European perspective is that much more attention is required for virtual internationalization activities such as COIL and virtual exchange. And similarly, more attention is required on the digitization of administrative tasks. So clearly, practitioners feel that the institution's goals for internationalization to be achieved needs more attention to the development of their activities and digitization. If we look at the fact that the European Union funds a number of programs around different aspects of international higher education, we asked them in terms of the level of agreement with the following statements. And the first one was around what are called BIPs, blended intensive programs. These are funded programs that encourage typically short-term programs that are hybrid in nature and that have been encouraged a lot. Oops, apologies. Let's go back to that screen. There we go. The respondents' view there, as you can see, 17% strongly agreeing versus 34% just agreeing. But what's noticeable is that you have 25% saying neither agree or disagree, or 14% that are disagreeing with that. And this is one of the key programs of the EU, so it's interesting to see that reflected. If you look at another strand of mobility opportunities, this is through what's called the Erasmus Plus program, and that's a mixture of short-term, long-term traineeships, etc. Do they fit the needs of the students in your institution? You'll see that broadly there is agreement of 43% and strong agreement of 26%. So those programs have been running a lot longer, therefore much more embedded within the internationalization activities of institutions typically. So if we look at what two topic areas that interest you personally and or professionally, respondents would highlight particularly strongly the digitization of administrative tasks and virtual international activities there also had a strong showing at 28%. So clearly these are very important to international higher education practitioners. If we then break that down by region, you can see that it carries a lot more weight. Most common choice, for example, in Southern Europe for digitization of administrative tasks, but across the board, you can see it's the second most common choice. We've also included a column for the number of respondents from Western Asia as well, just as a comparator. And then if we look at virtual internationalization activities, you can see that it has a stronger selection from areas such as Southern Europe and Eastern Europe. And that is borne out by the data I mentioned, the BIPs, for example, the blended intensive programs. Those have really high interest in places like Azerbaijan, Armenia, 80+% responding in favor of them. But that is not reflected when you look at, for example, Denmark in in Northern Europe, where it falls down to around the 50% mark. If we then look at the digitization of administrative tasks in a bit more detail, you can see there that there is leaders who are committed to the digitization of administrative tasks is worth noting at 13% and 41%. In terms of having a clear idea of the plan for digitization, that's much less. But you can see that they believe that their leadership is committed to it. Whether the resources are sufficient for the digitization of administrative tasks, that's much lower. You get about 32% strongly agreeing or agreeing. And what's worth highlighting there at the bottom, has progress been made in this area in the last 12 months, and it is again around half that are agreeing with that statement. If you ask respondents how they would compare it to other institutions, the blue columns are comparing yourself against other institutions in your country, and the red columns are for other institutions in the European higher education area. You can see that typically they don't, it's more the average that see themselves as being comparable to other institutions. Very, very few feel that they're leading in the digitization of their administrative tasks. We turn then to virtual internationalization activities at their institutions. The percentage that include virtual mobility is half, COIL nearly half, MOOCs at 30%, virtual exchange at nearly half as well. And then you have the older forms of virtual internationalization collaboration like telecollaboration and e-twinning, much less, and those are continuing to show a downward trend. So it'd be useful to see now, does your institutional organization have leaders who are committed to virtual internationalization activities that it is pursuing? So you can have that poll up, please. And again, Venus, if you could let me know once the people have voted.
We're now voting for the poll. We're not sharing the results.
Great, thank you, I can see that. So here we see that you have very strong agreement, so 80% saying that their institution has leaders who are committed to virtual internationalization, and that's excellent and very good to see. And if we then turn to poll 5, my institutional organization has made progress in the area of virtual internationalization activities in the last 12 months. So again, we can see nearly 83% strongly agreeing that their organization has made progress in the area of virtual internationalization activities in the last year, which is a very healthy percentage, and it's great to see that positive trend. Now, let's compare that to the findings in the barometer. And you can see there that there has been progress, certainly in terms over the last 12 months. You can see at the bottom, which is about 44% that strongly agree or agree, much less than the audience here. And then similarly, in terms of leaders who are committed to the virtual internationalization activities, you have 43%, again, which is much less than what was shown in the audience. So fascinating to see that divergence from what we're seeing in the audience, which I assume is mainly from Asia, and what we have in Europe. And again, if we were to look at respondents comparing their institution profile in relation to virtual internationalization activities to other institutions, there are very few that would describe themselves as leading, smaller number that are above average. Most will put themselves in the average or indeed below average category when particularly comparing themselves to other institutions across the European higher education area. When we turn to the topic of which area in virtual internationalization requires the most urgent attention, again, fascinating to see that 27% of respondents feel that COIL and virtual exchange needs urgent attention, that academic staff engagement and training needs attention. And then you can see the smaller ones like Erasmus, the blended intensive programs, collaboration partnerships and impact measurement. So really interesting to see that there is a institutional aspiration to do much more in COIL and virtual exchange, as we can see from earlier results, but there also is a very clear need to do a lot more in terms of the views of the practitioners to enable that strategy to be realized. So then if we look at the conclusions, what we saw is that digital transformation is reshaping roles, and we saw that from the results from the participants in today's summit as well. So in the barometer, 81% of professionals report needing new skills or additional effort, with digital AI skills the most critical at 40%. We saw that virtual internationalization shows untapped potential. 58% believe it needs more attention, yet only 26% rate themselves above average. It's also clear that leadership commitment drives success. Institutions with committed leaders are showing significantly better progress in both digitization and virtual activities. Implementation gaps are persistent, despite recognizing the importance of digitization and virtual internationalization. Many institutions are lacking in clear plans, in resources, and in measurement frameworks. And then lastly, academic staff engagement is urgent. We saw that COIL virtual exchange at 27% and faculty training at 19% require immediate attention to realize those virtual internationalization goals. So that disconnect, as I mentioned earlier, between the strategy and what actually is being delivered on the ground is worth noting there. So that's the view from Europe, and I hope you found that insightful. I would like to share that the upcoming EAIE conference, which is going to be held this year in Gothenburg, Sweden, in September, has a number of sessions that will be touching upon digitization. Here are 4 examples that are being highlighted. Particularly worth noting the ones on virtual exchange for administrative staff, which is felt as a key driver for embedding COIL within institutions to support academic colleagues. And then looking at ways in which to put students at the center of the COIL experience. So here we're talking about formalizing COIL leadership to support that global learning for all. What we'd also like to highlight is the EIE training that relates to virtual exchange. So we run 2 programs on a regular basis. One is launching virtual exchange at your institution, and that's an online course that's designed to equip you with tools to deploy virtual exchange at your institution. And the second one is implementing virtual exchange in the curriculum, which again is very hands-on. They run over a couple of days, non-consecutive, to allow for some reflection in between. One is aimed at international higher education professionals, and the other is aimed at academic colleagues who wish to implement virtual exchange within their curriculum. So the EIE is pleased to be able to offer these 2 participants of the summit at the member rate. And if any of you are interested in signing up for these, then please do contact either the organizers, or you can contact the EAIE at leadership@eaie.org. We'd love to have you participate in these online sessions. We find that bringing in practitioners and academics from outside of Europe often enriches these training sessions. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it'd be great to have some of you come and participate in the conference, which has over 7,000 participants from across the globe, many from Asia, who participate not just in the conference and its sessions, etc., but also in the very large exhibition that takes place, that often showcases new and innovative ways of engaging in virtual internationalization. So I think that hopefully covers it, and it allows us about 10 minutes or so for questions. So Venus, I'll hand back to you.
Sure, thank you. So once again, thank you for Mr. Shah for the enlightening presentation. So we appreciate your time and expertise. So now we will open the floor for questions in 10 to 15 minutes. Please feel free to propose your questions. If you wish to propose your question directly, please raise your virtual hand by clicking the hand icon, and you will be invited to share your questions shortly. Or you may type your questions in the chat box, and we will invite you, and we will invite our keynote speaker to respond to you. All right, so maybe I get the first question asked. All right, so one of the urgent attention is talking about the COIL and virtual exchange, and about the academic staff engagement and training. So other than joining the course, how can we get equipped when we are getting the very first stage to start commencing the virtual exchange and promote in our campus environment? Because in my experience, it is quite difficult to motivate our students and staff to engage in the virtual exchange. So is there any tips or any experience that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my time in Australia, we had this aspiration very much to engage in mobility, but given that Australia is so far away from most destinations, it didn't make sense from a sustainability standpoint to keep encouraging students to go on long haul flights. So certainly during my time as the Deputy Vice Chancellor there, I was very proactively engaged in developing virtual internationalization models and mechanisms. Now, the challenge was that there was no real experience within the institution on how to achieve that. So the approach that we took at the time was to work in partnership with other institutions in our university network. In this case, it was the Matariki network. And what was great is that we were a network of 7 universities from across the world. And we were able to bring in the Durban University of Technology from South Africa to train the trainers program that was devised by them across a number of what we called COIL champions in our institution. So the viewpoint was to not to be able to persuade every academic to engage, but actually identify those who had an interest in COIL and virtual exchange, and to then put them, as well as select professionals, administrative staff, through this train the trainer program that the DUT colleagues from South Africa delivered. All delivered a course online and delivered over a period of 3 to 6 months. And there were different levels of complexity, but the idea was that by the end of the training, these individuals could then train others in their universities. And so the idea is you start small with champions and you grow out from that by showcasing and training. And so that's very much a grassroots level approach, bottom up, as opposed to trying to enforce it from the top. I felt it needed to be the choice of academic colleagues who were really interested and engaged with it, and they would then in time proselytize and promote those opportunities. And so that was a really great way of developing that. And I can probably share another example, which was around working with some of our Indonesian university partners. And here we were challenged in trying to develop COIL programs with students that were often in remote areas that perhaps didn't have access to strong internet connectivity. And so adapting COIL for delivery via asynchronous models such as WhatsApp was another fascinating learning experience, and again showed certainly to me that you can develop quite innovative ways of engaging in virtual exchange, and technology, and in particular internet connectivity, didn't necessarily need to be a barrier.
Great, thank you so much for your sharing. So we have 2 more questions online. So for the first one is Professor Mira Katiwi from Malaysia. She is asking about that. Has EAI conducted any research on different kind of skills faculty members gained through COIL implementations? If yes, would you mind to share the finding, please? Thank you. That's her question.
I don't know the answer to that. I can certainly check, and if we have, then we'd be happy to again share it through you, the organizers, to distribute to the participants in this summit. It's the research we have. I know we are in the process of commissioning, certainly in the virtual internationalization space. But there will be other resources, I no doubt, and I will ask colleagues from the EAIE Secretariat to identify some of the more recent ones, and we'll hopefully try and share some of the links with you.
All right, so we have another question online. So one of our participants, Dick O'Connell, is asking about what does digitalization of administrative tasks entitle? Are there rubrics to measure the level by which an HEI has achieved this? Because of the financial constraint, the digitalization of administrative tasks can be challenging for many smaller HEIS. Is there any other alternatives? So he has typed the question in our chat box too, so we can read it.
I'm trying to access the.
No worries.
If I stop, no, it's okay. Oh yes, I see it now. Right. So, what does the sization of the task entail? And are there rubrics to measure the level by which any HEI has achieved this? So in terms of defining that, that is a broad term that encapsulates a very wide range of administrative tasks. It's typically where you're moving from paper-based to online and digital forms of administration. And you know, if we look at it in, say, the mobility context, it's moving away from paper forms that students are obliged to complete and to digitize that whole process of getting approvals for the mobility scheme, whether that's through getting approval of the partner institution, getting approval within the institution from academic leads of respective programs, all the way through to the approvals that have to go to the European Union to unlock mobility funding through, for example, Erasmus Plus. So that whole train of digitization is very much a real focus, because there's a lot of reporting that has to be delivered to the European Union in return for the Erasmus Plus funding. And so having that digitized obviously makes it much less burdensome from an administrative perspective. But to take the point that Dick is highlighting, I do agree that there are financial constraints, particularly amongst smaller HEIs. What we're seeing is a lot more private providers coming into this space, providing sort of turnkey solutions around key elements of digitization within international higher education. And I've just focused really on mobility, but I imagine that similarly in the virtual exchange space, there's certainly organizations and consultants that are advising on that. So, for example, I mentioned the two training programs that are run. That one is specific to administrators, and that does talk about how do you create the digital environment to foster greater COIL take up amongst academics and students, and so that's about trying to address it from a systems point of view. But I recognize the sentiment in the question, which is to say that it is challenging, certainly for smaller institutions where budgets will not be as large. But equally, in the current financially challenged environment of Europe, it's also a challenge. But there's often investment in this area because it's seen as being more efficient and cost effective to be able to deliver the administrative tasks related to international higher education through a digital format.
So once again, thank you so much for Mr. Shah for sharing, and thank you all participants for your active participation. We value your opinions, so please fill out the feedback form. Later on, we will show it with the QR code and the link in the group chat. So we are hoping to see you or joining our panel sessions later. And once again, thank you so much for Mr. Shah for sharing. It means a lot for us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to join you virtually, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your summit.
Yeah, the experience are very insightful, especially for us in the Asia area. We're gonna promote the virtual exchange with different institutions. So what's the background from Europe is quite encouraging us to continue the practice among our region. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much again, and wish you all the best. Bye-bye.